Two humorous nurses would like to acknowledge the true custodians of the land in which we record our podcast, the Yorta Yorta people.
We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders listening today. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Hey, are you a nurse? Do you like to express yourself in fun ways while at work? Then check out the high quality products for great prices at eNurse. From stylish scrubs to fun accessories, eNurse has you covered. Just head to enurse.com.au. Two Humorous Nurses with Kelly and Alicia.
The podcast that makes learning history less boring.
Ooh. Welcome to Two Humorous Nurses, where we plan to bring you funny, informal, conversational chats about all things nursing.
Today's kind of nursing related. I feel like the word nursing is a bit looser these days.
Yeah. Medical. Today's a medically themed.
Yeah, medical innovations.
Yeah. How fun.
I feel like we always start our episodes like, how fun. This is going to be fun.
We're so funny.
I don't know how this one came about. I think we liked the idea of what things had nurses invented, and then it kind of spiraled into what great things have been invented in medicine.
Yeah.
And, the game changers in the medical world that have made life easier.
There's been so many changes even in the 22 years I've been nursing that have made life easier.
That things have come out and they've gone, this is the new bee's knees.
Like sticky covers to go over like IV cannulas or plasters or, like they never existed. We used to just tape a bit of glad wrap around someone's arm.
And we still do that. We still use the black garbage bag.
Our hospital's too lame to actually buy the devised
I did
piece
hear
of plastic.
I heard something in a meeting the other day about the plastic bags that go over people's casts.
Yeah, they're good.
They're actually designed.
They're designed by a
purpose.
nurse, I'm pretty sure.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then you have squares to go over like PICC lines or
the shower.
Yeah, and they just have sticky edges.
Great.
You just put it on. Too easy.
Of course.
Anyway, we're not talking about those. Yeah.
No, we're not talking about those today. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about a couple of specific innovations, I guess, or inventions that directly impact us as nurses and our patients. One was even created by a nurse, and we could have chosen any, and maybe one day we can talk about you and your finger and toe dressing.
Nah, I'll get to that later. I already kind of went down that rabbit hole.
Oh, did you? All right, well, tell me about your
invention.
Yeah.
Well, I found this one really fascinating, and then when I found out it was invented by a nurse, I had to know more. I think you wanted to do this one. I was like, no, Kelly, no, I have to. And it's the crash cart.
Yeah.
Originally called the crisis cart.
Oh, that's way better.
Is it? It's too hard to say. Somebody get the crisis cart. It's a crisis. I don't know.
Rather than now we're just like, he's crashing. Get the crash cart.
I don't know that I've ever said he's crashing. I've just gone, fuck.
I don't know if I've ever
get
called
the cart.
I'll be like, you turned up without the cart?
Yeah,
what did you come for?
I love it when you're like the last person that runs to a code and you're standing by the trolley with your head out like, do you need the cart?
Do I need to push it in?
Is it a false alarm? Have they had a fall or are they dying?
That's funny.
Yeah, anyway, so officially the crash cart was, officially patented by someone named Joel Noble, but I'll get to that. In 1967, Anita Dorr, a registered nurse who was working in Boston in the US, spearheaded the creation of the first emergency crisis cart. So she was working as the supervisor of an ED, and she realised that it was taking people way too long to find all of the equipment that they needed in an emergency. So they didn't have like a designated area for emergency equipment. It was kind of in stores, I guess. So and it was mostly that they'd get all the things and then just shove them in their pockets and then run to a coat.
In their dresses.
Like, man, we could do a whole episode on the things that we bring
shoved in our pockets.
Wouldn't be that funny, but
it'd be like when you go to a baby shower and they're like, what's in your handbag? You play that game? Do you have this?
That's great. Yeah, but I never used to carry a handbag and now I have a kid. Now I have to. She consulted with her nursing staff and figured out what items were absolutely necessary. And then she went home and her husband constructed a wooden prototype in their basement. They painted the cart bright red and put wheels on the bottom. Then obviously you could easily move it to the bedside. Yep. And I've got a picture here that we will put on Instagram when this airs. And it's like, it's so cute. It's like a...
She looks so happy.
She's thrilled with her invention. There's a picture of her and then it's literally just a picture of her and then the crash cart. It's not like the same picture. Anyway, so then I tried to figure out, like, based from this picture, what the hell is on this crash cart, right? Because there's like equipment. So it's a red kind of, it looks like a table on wheels, basically.
Yeah.
There's a shelf at the bottom and a shelf on the top and then a little drawer that says medicines on it.
Oh, cute. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It looks like there's a Mercury
thing,
Spigmo.
Oh, I was going to say the only thing I can identify is the oxygen cylinder on the bottom.
On the top one there, I think it's the old school Mercury Spigmometer.
Is that the one you learnt with? In the 60s? Oh, is it really?
No, nah. Okay. But I reckon there's still a doctor here that uses one.
Oh, my God.
And I reckon that bottle of red stuff is maybe mercurochrome. Do you remember that stuff?
Not chloroform.
And there's probably a glass syringe on there somewhere. Box of tongue depressors maybe.
I really couldn't.
Some bottles of saline. There's probably a line of Coke on there. You know, the old days. Classic. Anyway, yeah, that's cute.
Yes, anyway, there's cute. Lots of things there, but I couldn't actually work out what was on it. But I guess I don't know enough about medicine in the 60s to be able to work that out. So that's the crisis cart. It was it wasn't the only one though being developed around that time. So obviously she wasn't the only person who had identified the issue.
Yeah.
And other people had actually come up with similar concepts, but they were at the same time and they weren't in cahoots with one another. So a few people have actually been credited with the invention. So apparently when Daw came up with the crash cart, she went to patent it and someone was like, you can't. Whoever she went to said that she couldn't.
Probably because she was female.
Well, potentially. I don't know. It was the 60s. Although that was like the turn of the...
I mean, we're still
not there. So apparently that was her daughter who like quoted that saying that she did try, but she was told that she couldn't. So while she didn't receive a patent for the invention, she was credited for it. But Joel Noble did receive the patent. Interestingly, Joel Noble and Anita Daw both invented the crash cart basically at the same time. I think it was within a year of one another, and exclusive from one another. And then they both went on to found really important institutes and organisations for their respective practices, I guess. So Anita Daw went on to found the Emergency Nurses Association, which was the Emergency Department Nurses Association, and that's still going today.
Yeah.
And Joel Noble went on to found the Emergency Care Research Institute, and they both founded them within a few years of each other as well. And I thought maybe that's what it takes to pioneer something. You've got to have that extra level of drive, and you've got to have that extra,
passion.
For sure. Like you've got to be extra
into it.
Yeah. So the ECRI Institute is still going as well and focuses on research in emergency medicine, resus and related biomed engineering studies.
That's cool.
And it got me thinking, because we have joked about my finger and toe dressing, and I saw an article that was talking about Anita Daw and just saying how nurses really don't have the tools and they're really not invited to the table when it comes to design, and how we lack the training and encouragement to take part in design. And I think who better to consult with than the people who are actually doing this job? I think there's lots of things that nurses have invented, but that maybe we don't realise because they just kind of appear on our shelves and we go, how cool's this?
Yeah,
this
exactly.
does this. But yeah, I think that we absolutely should be involved in finding solutions to workplace problems.
Yeah, for sure.
So I did Google then. I was like, you know what? If we're doing an episode on this, I'm going to go and find out how I get a patent for my finger and toe dressing. Right? So I Googled it.
Have you invented the finger and toe dressing yet? Do you know what product, or you just gone straight to patency?
No, well, I was like, what's the process, right? How do you go about when you invent something? What's the next step? Because I don't know. And I've been talking about this for 5 years and done nothing about it. It is way more in depth than I anticipated.
Yeah, I imagine so.
It's you need to basically, even though your invention works well and it does the desired, like for me, it goes on beautifully. There's no like flaps that aren't stuck down. Like the whole thing is secure, perfect. It works. It functions exactly how I designed it to.
Yeah.
Even though I know that, I
gotta prove
basically
it?
have to go and do every other material I can find, every other possible way that I could make this work, every other design. Do I need to make the cuts a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, like, and document all of this process, like all of that trial and error, even if I don't have to, even because I know that my dressing works as designed, right?
Yep.
Then you have to go, well, do you have complete exclusivity of that design in your brain? Is that yours? Is that like... Yeah. Has anyone else come up with anything that could possibly be related to the way that I came up with this design?
And have they?
Well, I will say that yes, others have.
But not as good.
And I'm talking about Coverplast, like the brand, whoever makes Coverplast. I think like Elastoplast, maybe they're the same people, I don't know. But
they look the same.
So other people have come up with similar concepts, but they don't work as well as mine, I've decided. And I didn't come up with mine based on those designs. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter.
Well, technically
can't
no.
prove that.
So I don't think I could get a patent for my design is what I'm saying.
But you could create it. You just couldn't patent it.
Exactly. But then I don't know.
We could have the Beavis toe dressing instead of Coloplast Classic. You could have a Beavis Classic. A Beavis.
The Beavis bunion. No, it's not for bunion, sorry.
Beavis. Well, we wouldn't just say Beavis Classic. You'd want Beavis.
I don't know if I'd want it to be
bespoke.
called Beavis.
Beavis Bespoke toe dressings.
I don't know that I want my brand to be bespoke. I want it to be like, manufactured in China somewhere. I'm not going to be cutting them all out individually.
People just call you when they've got a toe dressing they need. Sure, hang on, I'll pop it in.
I'll sit down with my Fix-A-Mo. Anyway, so
funny.
I have looked at Coverplast. They make one that's like butterfly shaped, which is not at all how mine is shaped. Like it's similar.
I get it.
And I'm going to draw a picture of mine and put it up on our stories.
Maybe you could make it. Cut it out, make it.
I'll put it on your finger.
Yeah, we'll do a live demo.
Oh, great. What a thrill.
Okay. People are
get excited
on the edge of their seats.
Make sure you pop it in your calendar. Set a reminder. Yeah, anyway. So that's my story about the crash cart. I think, I mean, the initial prototype is very similar to
what it is today.
The only difference is now there's more drawers and a little side bit.
Probably more drugs, probably more things like airway management, because they probably didn't do that as much back then.
But the design itself is...
Yeah, I mean, it looks very similar. It's red.
Looks like it's got a lock on the front.
And instead of a magnetic Spigmo, we've got like a automated AED on the top and a electronic BP.
I was reading something about crash carts, about like the progression of crash carts, and that recently they've started to include recording devices.
Yeah.
So that as soon as the crash cart is moved, it starts recording.
That's cool. Like sound and audio?
Yeah, so audio.
Ah, that's cool.
So then you can go back and reflect. You can actually look at real time to treatment, time to defib, whatever it is, because everything that gets done in a resus is communicated.
It's documented, yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's documented on paper, but like when you're in a resus, you're going like...
I also wonder what place there is for, maybe not in small locations like ours where the resus team is just the ward stuff. Yeah. But maybe that's on teams that have resus teams where the team leader for the day wears like a body cam.
Well, that's, I mean, cops do that, don't
exactly, yeah. To, because then it would be a great teaching tool.
It would be pretty damning, like if things go wrong, they're always like learned from.
Yeah, but then they're not going wrong because people are doing something bad. They're going wrong because the situation is that you can't revive that patient anyway. But then you could look back at it and be like, as a learning tool, you could be like, well, you literally did everything you could. And also you could show families that you've done everything you could.
If it went to court and things like that.
But I mean, even as for open disclosure, you can sit there and have a conversation with them and let them know exactly what you've done. But if they wanted to see, I feel like it's just an extra, in today's society, because a body
could be your nursing invention.
Oh, I don't care that much about resus, so I don't want to be involved in that. Anyway, while you're in the middle of a resus, there's nothing worse than cutting yourself on an ampule while trying to crack open that adrenaline.
I actually did that recently. I've never cut myself with an ampule ever. And someone's like, can you open this? I'm like, yeah, it's fine.
Well, a very clever Aussie nurse invented a little gadget called the Snap It. Snaps ampules.
eNurse actually sent us one of those. And I since cutting my finger, I use it all the time. It was designed to protect users from injury when an ampule exposes a sharp edge or shatters while being opened. With a simple insert and snap, you literally put this thing over the head of the ampule. I haven't used it yet.
I'm going to have to take it to work so I can try it.
You literally, it's like a little metal thing that you put over the head of the ampule and just snap it, and then
it snaps.
You can chuck it in the bin without touching it.
Well, there's no blades.
Innovative,
yeah. There's no blades. It reduces the risk of glass contamination, and it holds the snapped off glass top securely, so you can just eject it into the sharps container.
Yeah.
You can get your Snapper ampule opener and other essential nursing accessories at eNurse. You can use our code HUMOROUSNURSES for 10% off.
That's humorous like the bone. HUMERUS. Nurses. eNurse is Australia's leading nurse shop, specialising in everything that a nurse would need to survive every shift. From high quality and stylish nursing scrub sets to handheld study guides and nursing equipment. eNurse are truly a one-stop shop for everything you need. So head to enurse.com.au.
eNurse loves our nurses. Right, my topic.
Yes, tell us about yours. I'm excited. You never put your notes in the group document?
No, I was right on separate document.
So it's always a surprise.
Oh. I have chosen to do blood transfusions and the history of blood banking and history of blood banking.
Didn't we used to get transfusions from pigs? I can't wait to hear about this.
Anyway, I give blood to patients all the time. And
your own blood, just directly, vein to vein.
Put it in there. And obviously, if it's not given correctly, it is fatal. And despite giving blood literally sometimes weekly or more, it's one of the procedures that I actually am very vigilant of doing correctly. I mean, I do all of the stuff in our unit correctly, but blood is something that, if the patient's there, I'm very aware that they're having blood transfusions because shit can go wrong in a minute. Yeah. And I've seen it happen where the patient's been absolutely fine and in APO drowning in the course it took from walk to the toilet and back. Wow. Anyway, I thought I'd go back and have a look at the history of it because, what did they do before it?
Yeah, it's very clinical. It's very scientific. It's
yeah. So it started back in 1628 when an English physician. I'm going to struggle with that word for the whole.
Physician. It's my favourite.
English physician William Harvey discovers a circulation of blood in the human body. That blows my mind anyway, doesn't matter.
Yeah, but imagine in the 1600s you cut yourself and you're like, how'd that happen? What's this?
That? Yeah.
It tastes funny.
And then surprisingly, not long after that, the first attempt at a blood transfusion happened. I love how quickly they progressed to shit, right? So 1665 was the first recorded successful blood transfusion, and it happened in England by physician Richard Lower. And
Just say doctor.
Okay. Dr. Lower. He kept a dog alive by transfusing blood from another dog.
Yes.
1667, Richard Lower and John Baptiste Denis reported a successful transfusion from lambs to human.
Whoa. Successful. How successful are we talking? Did they live a week?
I don't know what records are like from back then, but anyway, within 10 years, transfusion from blood of animals to humans became prohibited due to reactions. Oh. It took 10 years though.
10 years of study. They've trial and error over 10 years.
I suppose with some things they're going to die. If they need blood, they're going to die anyway back then. So
it'd be hard
just
to
try
evaluate
whatever.
what the cause was.
Yeah. In 1795, American doctor Philip Singh Physic performs the first human blood transfusion. However, he doesn't publish the results.
Right.
I wonder why. Because they're dead. I don't know why. But anyway, I would imagine his results weren't what he was expecting.
What were they thinking? Honestly, let's just reflect here for a second. Thinking, hey, I think the best thing that we can put in a human's body is stuff that comes from an animal's body. Okay, in some instance nowadays they do that with valves from cows and stuff. But
pigs.
Yeah,
Pig
and cows,
valves.
I think. Yeah. I saw it on TV. Grey's Anatomy.
Of course. What can't?
But anyway, I'm
Dr.
surely
do?
like human to human would have been the logical
That's what I thought.
process there.
Anyway, it takes like a couple of 100 years
Jesus Christ.
for them to like work it out. Anyway, 1818, James Blundell, way out west where the rain. Anyway, British obstetrician.
Obstetrician.
Yeah.
Okay.
Performs a successful blood transfusion for a patient with postpartum hemorrhage. He uses blood from the patient's husband. In the next 5 years, he performs 10 transfusions, 5 of which are successful. He publishes these results along with creating various instruments to perform the transfusions and a rationale indication of blood transfusions.
Okay.
So
he's doing a lot of the work.
He did a lot of work, yep. So he introduced 2 instruments for the purpose of transfusions. They're called the impeller and the gravitator. Gravitator. The impeller and the gravitator. The impeller was a complex invention consisting of a cup, tube, and syringe. And then using the gravitator, blood was injected into the patient via a tube suspended from the vessel held high above the patient.
Okay, so similar to...
So you collect the blood from another human, you put it in the thing, and then you use gravity to put it through. But he made a fancy thing called the gravitator. Information of both these apparatuses were published in a very prestigious medical journal in 1829. Some of the indications that he suggested for transfusion were postpartum hemorrhage, extreme malnutrition, puerperal fever, which is a fever that occurs within 3 days of giving birth, and it's rarely seen anymore in today's society. It's like one of those diseases that just doesn't happen anymore. Cancer of the pylorus, a ruptured uterus, and hydrophobia, which is a fear of water, which back then would have been related to having rabies. It's quite a symptom of human rabies. So he'd sort of set up this, like, who should get blood, how do you give it, and the instruments used to give it.
But there's no knowledge yet about blood types?
No. So in 1840 in London, Samuel Armstrong Lame, aided with James Blundell, successfully treated haemophilia patients with whole blood transfusions. So they're starting to look at other blood diseases that they know.
Yeah.
Then in 1867, John Lister uses antiseptic to control infections during transfusions. So they start realising that transfusion reactions can be treated, and they start to use like antiseptic to wash the blood and things like that. But it's very agricultural. Like they're not really sure. Then in 1873 to 1880, for some reason, they start looking at what could be used as a blood substitute in humans if blood isn't available. So they start looking, US doctors start looking at milk from cows, goats and humans as a blood substitute. A few years later they realise
wasn't working.
Milk's not doing too good. So they start using saline infusions to obviously reduce the adverse reactions to milk. Shocking. But I love how, just their school of thought is like, what can we use now? So now they know you could substitute by giving people fluid. You can actually help them even if you're not giving blood. So now they're looking at
understanding of the components of blood.
Yeah. So they're looking at different things. In 1900 is when everything changes for blood. A very clever man called Karl Landsteiner, who's an Austrian physician, discovers the 3 human blood types, A, B and C. C was later changed to O. A couple of years later, a 4th type, AB, was added by Alfred de Castello and Adriano Stiolo. Landsteiner receives a Nobel Peace Prize for his discovery of the blood groups in 1930. So they're starting to realise that not all blood's the same.
1930.
Took him years to get
Hang on. Less than 100 years ago.
Was when he got the Nobel Peace Prize. In 1900 is when they discovered.
Right, okay.
So 120 years ago it was discovered. Okay. In 1907, Ludwig Hecton
I love this for you.
suggests that transfusion safety might be improved by cross-matching between donors and patients to exclude incompatibility. So now they're starting to think, if you've got these groups, what groups work, what don't work. So they put a lot of effort into
Wonder
this.
how they were getting donors. Were they taking them from cadavers
Probably.
or something?
Who knows? They did a lot of that stuff, didn't they? Ruben Ottenberg performs the first blood transfusion using blood typing and cross-matching in New York. They recognise that there's universal utility between Group O donors. In 1908.
They worked that out. Whether they did they took 1,000 people.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, we're going to give O blood to.
Well, you can test it in the tubes before you test it in humans. Maybe, I don't know, because you'd see. It's all about like the killing of the cells and stuff. Yeah. So in 1908, antiglobulin reactions are described. So they started to wash the blood to remove unbound antibodies. So when you cross match and you realise that they're forming these antibodies, and then they wash it all out and they can give it to you, which still happens today.
That's amazing.
Yeah. 1912, Roger Lee and Paul Dudley White, develop Lee-White clotting time. They learned that it's safe to give Group O blood to patients of any blood group, and that blood from all blood groups can be given to AB patients. The term universal donor and universal recipient are coined, and that's a game changer because all of a sudden now you can give trauma patients. Oh, they know this. But they haven't developed a way to at this stage, they're still just doing direct donors. There's no storage of blood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In 1914, anticoagulants are developed to allow the longer preservation of blood. And they use sodium citrate as a anticoagulant to allow for blood transfusions to go from direct to indirect. Took 10 years for this to be accepted, though.
Well, that would be a big undertaking. Going, how can we make blood last?
Yeah. So the discovery of being able to store the blood for several days in 1916 became the first blood depot, which was utilised during the World War I, so they could send blood to the battlefields for American soldiers and British soldiers.
Wow.
Yeah. In 1932...
I wonder how Europe was going with that.
Yeah.
God.
In 1932, the first blood bank was established, and by 1937, blood banks were in hospitals across America.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's like 90 years ago. In 1939 and 1940, the R or rhesus blood group system was discovered, again by Carl Landsteiner.
Good on you, Carl.
Yeah, him and a couple of other blokes realised that this rhesus negative positive blood group were the reaction of the majority of blood transfusions now, because they'd worked out the cross-matching of the groups, but now this rhesus factor was
I guess they had to work out why we're still having reactions.
Yeah.
Even if they're going from O to O.
Yeah,
whatever
exactly. Yeah. So they worked. So yeah, this along with the discovery of the ABO blood groups was like the biggest breakthrough with blood banking and transfusing. In 1950, they started to look at the sustainability of blood in blood banking, which they sort of have going, but not really. It's only a 3-day thing, kind of.
Right.
They changed from reusable glass bottles to plastic bags.
Okay.
Not plastic, you know what I mean, like the bag they come in today.
Yeah.
In the late 1950s, they formed a committee which was to inspect and accredit the monitoring of implementation of standards for blood banking across America. And the first edition of the standards for blood transfusion services was developed. So it's really not that long ago that they...
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's weird to think that some of the people who are like blood nurses now were born, like, blood specialists were born before these accreditation things were.
The committee was formed as the blood use had exploded due to the demand from open heart surgery, advances in trauma care, and just the general knowledge that blood was good. Yeah. So they started this committee right at the right time because blood use was starting to become a normalised procedure.
And I wonder when ambulances became an official service, and then those people you know what I mean, the demand would have been going up if as medicine got
at this stage
better.
You couldn't do it outside of a hospital setting. So during the 50s and 60s, blood banking and transfusion technology became the focus of many scientists.
Right.
Whole blood was being separated into plasma and red blood cells. Platelet concentrates were being used to reduce mortality from hemorrhage. Anti-hemophilic factor concentrates were being used to treat coagulation disorders. Fucking hell. Plasmapheresis was being introduced, and the rhesus immunoglobulin was being commercially introduced to prevent the rhesus disease factors in newborns with Rh negative women. And in America alone, there was over 6 million units of blood collected over that time period. So they're really starting to get in there and look at blood and how safety and things, but they still weren't long-term storing it.
Wow.
In 1970, blood banks moved
How long were they storing it for?
It was only a short period of time, I think it was like 3 to 5 days.
Right.
Blood banks were moving towards all volunteer donation in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
In 71, hepatitis B testing begins on donated blood. So prior to the 70s, no blood was tested for disease.
Oh, and that's why, like, prior to those dates, if people receive blood transfusions prior to those dates, then they are, like, most of them.
Well, they're at risk of any bloodborne disease.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot of bloodborne disease
weren't
available, weren't around. Yeah, I've got a friend who's HIV positive because of a blood transfusion.
I met a Hep C and then they got cured.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
Thankfully. In 1983, additives were added to extend the shelf life of red blood cells to 42 days. 1983. In 1985, the FDA approves enzyme linking immunosorbent assay. So it's called ELISA for the first blood screening test to detect HIV antibodies. So that's quite a few years after HIV
was rampant.
Yeah.
Freddie Mercury had already died.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. He died in the 90s.
But yeah, between 1985 and 1996, improvements were made to test blood donor blood for HIV, Hep A, B and C, and to help reduce the number of transfusion-related exposures. There was also a program in the late 90s where if you were affected by transfusion-related illnesses or diseases from the blood, that there was money available for you. So because, you know.
that was nobody's fault though.
No,
like,
they just didn't know.
They didn't know.
Yeah. Since 2000, there's been huge developments with blood and blood products. That includes a lot of things like screening for all viruses that become transfusible in the transfusible form. So there's actually viruses that have come and gone that have been cross-contaminated through viruses. And things like CAR T cell therapy, so chimeric antigen receptor for treatment of hematological cancers is a big thing that's come through to treat hemo cancers. They've recently discovered that they can freeze dry plasma to treat hemorrhage out in the combat setting. So that's been something that's come out. So there's all these like cool things, like doing a blood transfusion these days is actually very safe. So in 2022, there's still huge issues around who can and cannot donate blood based on sexuality and the locations you've lived in the world. Although I do believe they've just lifted the mad cow England thing. However, I think change is coming with the sexuality and stuff like that because the rigorous testing and donations.
And there's more education out there and people are in charge of their sexual health, you know, more now than they ever have been.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a whole different story.
It is a whole different story.
Blood matching, it just blew my mind that it took, 400 years to get to where we are from the very first time someone said, wow, we've got blood in our body.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine what that was like? Like everyone knew that you bled, but no one really understood it.
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
I can't.
That sometimes I think about how somebody discovered gravity. Like,
I know.
And how do you give it that name? Like there's just, my brain kind of ends up in this whirlwind spiral.
I mean, how did someone discover Wi-Fi? How did someone discover these tiny little things that
Wi-Fi did not just exist. Like
someone created it. That's true. Someone created Wi-Fi. Still fucking smart. Smart.
Saying Wi-Fi is the same as gravity. That is fascinating, really. Like,
so
do you know,
fascinating.
you said about how they can store blood for 42 days or whatever. I actually still assumed it was like, you know, when you get the blood bag and it says it expires after a couple of days. I just assumed that
You know, that's not, it's just the cross match that expires. It's not the actual blood bag. The bag will have a longer expiry than your cross match. Your cross match is only valid for 72 hours. So you only can transfuse in that 72-hour period, but the blood might not expire for another 2 weeks. I know I blew someone's mind the other day explaining that to them. They were like, "Oh my god!"
I think I did know that because I know when the cross match expires. But I assumed that blood. You know, you have a half an hour time limit between taking it out of the fridge and starting your transfusion. So I think that kind of, I don't know, that time limit tells me that this is perishable, I guess. Do you know what I mean?
If it doesn't get done in 4 hours, it explodes. Hurry up.
No, I mean, like, I guess I just feel like it's so precious that, and I don't know, I feel like the cells can start.
I got grumpy at someone once because they turned up with the patient with the blood, but they hadn't actually put a cannula in. I was like, never prep the product until a cannula is in the patient.
Damn straight.
Oh my god, that wasn't here. That was years ago.
What if it takes you half an hour to get a line in?
What if you
can't get a line in?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, then it goes back to the fridge. Anyway, I guess that was my thing. I really just assumed that it was so precious and that it had a really strict time limit and that it expires very quickly. And yeah, it's amazing. I mean, of course they found ways to store it.
That's exactly right.
I went to give blood once and then I was like, oh yeah, I have hemochromatosis. And they're like, you can't give blood. I'm like, what do you mean? It's iron rich.
You can give blood. You just need to.
I need a doctor's letter.
Yeah, they need to fill out your thing for you. And they have to use it differently.
Yeah, no, it's so annoying.
I throw out so much blood. I find it ironic that I'll have a patient in the chair that I'm taking blood out of.
For hemochromatosis.
And then in the next chair, I'll be giving an iron transfusion to someone that's got no iron. And in the next chair, I'll be giving a blood transfusion to someone with no blood. Here I am throwing away 400 mils of beautiful blood.
Shocking. Why don't they go and give blood?
Oh, a lot of them, it's just too complicated because I need a doctor to fill it out. Yeah.
To me, and then I got pregnant and I was like, oh, well, I had a PPH, so I might as well hang on to my blood for a little bit longer.
I just have no iron, so it's hard to give blood when you have no iron.
You can have some of mine.
Yeah, great.
We'll do a
vein to vein, yeah.
There's a few things that nurses did invent, some more things I found. Do you want to hear them?
Yeah, go
Some of these are new and some of these are old.
Yeah.
Colour-coded IV lines. I don't use them. We use the stickers.
Yeah.
But in 2003... a nurse named Terry Barton Salinas and Gail Barton Hay, they might be related, patented colour-coded IV lines in 2003. It came to Terry when she was in a labour and delivery nurse and they wanted to reduce medication errors in time crunch situations, which clever. The crash cart, which we already talked about. There's a diabetic foot ulcer device being, pretty much being perfected right now by Ernesto Holguin. He's a dialysis clinical coordinator and he created a device to prevent diabetic foot ulcers and prevent infection in existing ulcers. So it inspects, dries and takes pictures of patients' feet and sends the information to their doctors. How weird. Anyway, so it's like very recent and it gained popularity around the time that the iPhone came out.
Oh, yeah.
And he's been perfecting it ever since. He got a patent for it for about 2 years ago.
Good on him.
Yep. Sanitary pads. I thought this was a good one. So a nurse came up with this during World War II because they used to use salvia cotton to treat wounds. That apparently it's like 5 times as absorbent as cotton.
Yeah.
And it was more readily available at the time than cotton. So the nurses in the war began using the salvia cotton as sanitary pads.
Clever.
And by the end of the World War, it was turned into commercial sanitary pads. Ostomy bags. A Danish nurse, Elise Sorensen, invented the ostomy bag.
This is all about making nurses' life easier.
So true.
It's all
and
about
also for the patient. Like imagine if you had a stoma and no bag to put on it. What the fuck would you do?
I had enough trouble with a stoma. I don't have a stoma. Without a stoma, yeah.
I love this. This is called the Trable. It's Joyce Harrell, a nurse, created the Trable. The invention enables healthcare professionals to attach a table to any pole.
Wow.
It's a helpful attachment to IV poles because it provides an extra surface for tools. And I think...
Oh, we need surfaces.
That's a fucking genius idea.
That is a fucking genius idea.
A little table that you
can
clip
onto. Why are they not in hospitals?
I do not understand. So a little table that you clip onto an IV pole. Imagine when you're putting in a cannula and you've got a little table there. or you're doing anything with a little table, just
Love
at the head
it.
of the bed or at the bottom of the bed. Oh, fucking genius. Love it.
Where are these in our life?
I know. Anyway, that's all I got.
God, that's interesting.
I know. That one really excited me. I wonder what other medical innovations are in the makings.
Oh, I reckon there's probably heaps.
If you know of something, send us a DM on Instagram. We'll steal the idea and use it at work. If you know how to get your hands on a table, sign me up.
Yes, if you have them at your work, send us a photo.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I want to see them in action.
And if you have a funny like nursing invention, I want to see it. I'm going to take a picture of the next finger dressing I do.
Yeah.
Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Two Humorous Nurses Podcast.
Don't forget to rate us 5 stars or leave us a review on the platform you're listening to us on right now. Send us an email with whatever you want, really. Just to say hi. Hello at twohumorousnurses.com. That's humorous like the bone. HUMERUS. Bye.